Well, welcome back to the show. Harlem Grown is a not-for-profit organization whose mission is to inspire youth to lead healthy and ambitious lives through mentorship as well as hands-on education in urban farming, sustainability, as well as nutrition. Now, since the year 2011, Harlem Grown has operated local urban farms to increase access to healthy food for Harlem residents. And joining me now, I am pleased to be joined by the founder and CEO of Harlem Grown, Mr. Tony Hillery. And Tony, good to have you, my brother.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, I like segments like this because it's a time for me that I go back and look back at home and be able to see literally when you talk about homegrown, that's me. I'm a homegrown Harlemite. And I know that one of the things that has been in Harlem for a long time was really food insecurity, food deserts. And now to see an organization such as yourself really be impactful in the area of urban farming, it's a great joy to see. So tell us about how this all got started.
Oh, man, it's a really convoluted story. Like I said before, I don't live in Harlem, nor am I from Harlem. Funny, my parents were born and raised in Harlem, but I had no connection to Harlem at all. I actually live in the Riverdale section of the Bronx, and I lived a very lucky, privileged life. And in my life, my definition of poverty was just not having any money. I really didn't understand it. So in 2010, the financial crisis hit me. My business was failing and I'm getting depressed. Sitting right here where I'm speaking to you right now, I was reading about schools, not schools here, but schools throughout the city. And I didn't really understand how in the richest city in the world, we had this disparity in education. So one day, I guess fighting depression, I got on the subway and got off on 135th and Lenox, started walking up the street. There was a school right there. I saw the kids. I went in, told the principal, I'm here to help. She said, help with what? I never had a plan, but I met these children, no different than my children, other than where they lived. And as I volunteer and you see everything every day, I mean, every kid in the school qualified for free breakfast, lunch in school. You see the diet, you see all these different levels that create these communities. And it really blew my mind when I found out, this was 10 years ago, that there were 68,000 homeless children in New York City. Now, any New Yorker, we know homelessness, we see it every day, but you never see children, right? They're like the invisible problem, right? Mm-hmm. And I found out that like 30% of the kids in that school were living in homelessness. And then you really dig deeper, and there were 14 homeless shelters in a 4-block radius of that school. Right? That's not indicative of Harlem. As you know, it's a working class, resilient, proud community, but they disproportionately place these homeless shelters in communities like that. They want to put them everywhere. They want to put them downtown, but we see what happens then. They come out and protest, they threaten lawsuits. So where do they end up? They have to go somewhere. They end up in communities like this. So today, 10 years later, I am sorry to say that there's 115,000 homeless children in New York City. It's more than doubled in less than a decade, in spite of all the work that's being done on the ground. And we must do better than that.
Yeah, we have to do better than that. And you're doing better because, listen, you're providing opportunity for urban farming. So I'll just go back to my story for a minute, right? I was a basketball player. I played ball. I really, Harlem Park was right where it is, right around the corner from you. The Y, Kennedy Center, all that there. So I'm using this as a backdrop to say, when we talk about urban farming, that was not even introduced. There was nothing about urban farming that we were introduced to today. How did you get kids locked into this whole thing about urban farming?
Man, I tell you, me too. I walked in there 52 pounds heavier. I was unhealthy. I was on medicine. I'm in the lunchroom watching these kids and I watch how they eat. They couldn't even identify simple vegetables. But I told you about 14 shelters in a 4-block radius. Shrink that radius into a 3-block radius. We have 55 fast food restaurants and 29 pharmacies in a 3-block radius.
Wow.
No affordable food options. And then you can kind of connect the dots. You can't eat what you don't know. And it's a generational thing, right? So now things become convenient and fast and unhealthy. So right across the street from this school was an abandoned community garden. So I started cleaning it out, just as an activity for the kids. And then a little girl in kindergarten at the time tugs on my shirt and says, "Why don't we plant something?" I never planted anything until then. I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
But something magical happened when a child plants something. They take ownership of that plant. They won't try anything green inside. They'll ew, 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 right? But let them plant that plant and they're going to taste it. And 8 out of 10 times that they taste it, they're going to like it. But then we're right back where we started. You can't purchase at affordable prices what we grow right across the street. So that's what prompted it. And we had 400 students in the school. So you can imagine the mass of food we had to grow.
Right.
So the garden, we made it a farm. We grow collectively over our sites. We grow about 6,000 pounds of organic produce a year. Everything is free. We have egg laying hens that lay farm fresh eggs every day in Harlem, and everything is free. We have nutrition education, cooking classes, and simple recipe writing. Everything is free. I have to emphasize that. How
Right.
do you charge poor people for anything? So we fundraise and we underwrite everything for the community. And if we didn't learn anything through the pandemic, food is very vital to health. COVID wasn't killing us at those record numbers. It was the underlying health conditions that were killing us. And most of them were diet related. Diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, all diet related, right?
Right.
So we engage these kids. And more importantly, what people don't understand about us is that we only plant fruits and vegetables, but we grow healthy children and sustainable communities. I hire young people from Harlem, right? I hire young people and we pay fair wages and healthcare for everyone. But you start on the farm, but you have to go back and pursue your education, get your GED, open bank accounts. There's a lot to that. But you see those young people that we've grown from just hanging out to being a farmer now. Oh my God, man. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life.
So when you think about where you are in terms of the impact that young people's lives in that kind of way, obviously it's not something you wanted to make a difference, but I see now that it's more than you've ever, set out to do. Talk to me about community buy-in, because listen, when you put a garden and a farm in the midst of, a neighborhood, you get a lot of people like, okay, what's going on here? What's happening? Talk to me about neighborhood buy-in and how that really impacted the work that you do.
Oh man, great question. That comes from someone who's from there, and you understand.
Listen, I know my neighborhood, man.
Yes. But let me tell you, the nonprofit sector as a whole, the mission is sound, the passion is sound, but our delivery sucks. It's usually someone not from the community coming in to teach people or show people. People don't need either of those. They need empowering. They can do it themselves. They know what they need and they know what they want. So just think about that arrogant approach that nonprofits do, that we know better. How do we know better than someone born and raised right there? So in the beginning, when I cleaned out that lot, I came in there all green-eyed. I mean, I'm all, everything is beautiful. I come in here with a piece of paper that I got the contract. The people who were hanging out there, they weren't having it, right? It was very contentious. But then I kind of understood where it was coming from. It wasn't anything personal. It was just what I just described. Who is this guy? He's not from here. We've been here for years. So you show up every day and you have the buy-in. You include the community in every step of the way. 10 years later, we are so valued in that community. It's something you've never seen. One of our sites on 127th Street, between Lenox and Adam Clayton, we spent $1 million on this 2-story vertical hydroponic system. It's the most amazing thing you've ever seen in New York, maybe in the world. There's another one like it in Copenhagen, Denmark, and the one on 127th Street. We have no problem on our sites. We have no vandalism or theft on our sites. The community embraces what we do because they're part of what we do. Everything we do is for the community.
Yeah, well, I'll just give you a little piece of information. My address growing up was 237 West 127th Street, apartment number 3A. That 127th Street between 7th at 8th,
Yep,
Adam Clayton Powell, yes, and Frederick Douglass, for people who don't know.
that's
So to
right.
know what you're talking about, I know firsthand that, communities can really buy in. And I'm glad to have the conversation with you because really, there's so many people, there's misconceptions and stereotypes out there. Oh, the community doesn't want that.
Oh,
And it's a lie. And it's a lie because people want to be able to have sustainable lifestyles through healthy eating, through nutrition and that. And you're right. Growing up, there wasn't an access. We didn't have many stores in our neighborhood. We had a lot more fast food stores, a
mhm.
lot more junk food stores. And to really be able to have this kind of thing in the backyard literally was not seen. So talk to us about how this replicates out in other neighborhoods, because, if it works here, it can work in other places too.
Yes, it does. And great segue, because we get inquiries from city planners all across the country, and people pay me to speak. I tell my story. They fly me all around the country. I go in there, tell the story. I charge them a fee that goes to our budget. And unbeknownst to many, there's a Harlem in every city in this country. I just work in Harlem. This is BronxNet, so you're in the Bronx. And the way the powers that be would have it to make us think that this is a racial thing, like this is a Black and brown people thing. No, it's a poor people thing. If you're poor in this country, I've been to some cities, I didn't see a Black or brown face for a couple of days, but you'll see miles of fast food restaurants and a drive-through pharmacy at every intersection. Some of the most unhealthy people you've ever seen. The common denominator is this is what they do to our communities. It can't be an accident. It can't be an accident. These food deserts, as they say, deserts are natural. This is not natural. This is all man-made. This is zoning. This is intentional, right? And I don't want to get into conspiracy theories and all of that, but this is the landscape in which we find ourselves. It is scalable, but Harlem is unique. Harlem is unique to the fact that it's so dense. And you have a high-rise area of housing that has 10,000 people in it. I can put a farm across the street and have 1,000 people come through that place. And kids can come on their own because they're just walking outside and right there is the farm. Same can't be said in Kansas City, right? Where a child has to get to this location. So logistically, it's a little challenging. It's not as easy as in Harlem. I love Harlem. I can plop a farm down right here and you can throw a rock in any direction and hit a school or a daycare in any direction because we're so packed. Same thing in the Bronx, same thing in Brooklyn. I mean, that's urban settings, right? So it's not as easy in more rural settings, but the premise, the roots of what we do in the schools with these children, that's replicable anywhere. It just takes the will of the school board and the Department of Education in said community to make it a reality.
Yeah, share with us. I mean, you've got a 10-year anniversary. I mean, you've been doing this now for 10 years, honestly, and you've done this and you've amassed a great amount of community partners. But most of all, you've been able to capture the heart of the community and particularly our young people. What gives you the most satisfaction in what you do?
Man, I can tell you the dozens of children who've come through this program and first generation 4-year university students. We have one in NYU, all on the dean's list, doing whatever they want to do. Again, we plant fruits and vegetables. We grow people. We grow people. And that's what I hang my hat on, is that, these schools, man, it's very hard. It's very challenging for these students to go through. And there's no lack of intelligence or creativity in these inner cities, man. They take nothing and make something out of anything. I mean, they're the most resilient communities you've ever seen. But the odds and the math doesn't line up in their favor because you have to run a gauntlet of things to succeed. So you need that guidance. You need that mentorship. You got it with basketball or whatever mentor you had along the way. Too many of our kids don't have that. And that's my secret sauce. All those beautiful corporations you see on our website, they're not donors, they're partners. I understand the difference of a donor. A donor is a transaction. You give me a check, I give you a report, end of story. Partners, we identify a common cause. In this case, it's youth, education, nutrition, homelessness, and we try to do it together. So we have partnerships. They send their employees on these farms and work with these kids. They open up their doors of their Fortune 100 companies. My kids are there all the time. I get our kids paid mentorships and fellowships and internships at these organizations. That opens up the doorway of possibility. And that's all this is. That's what separates these communities. It's lack of access and lack of opportunity. So we use our farms as that to build a bridge from downtown to uptown.
Before we go, I know you got kids who are out there watching right now, and we're seeing in the Bronx, we're seeing in Manhattan, we're seeing right there in Harlem. So if there's a young man, young woman, or even a parent of somebody who wants to take advantage of this, how do they do that?
Just reach out to us. Well, it's always, first thing is showing up, right? You just show up on our farms. We're open every day during the season. We're only 5 days now because of the winter. But you show up or you send an email to info@harlemgrown.org. And if we can't do it, we'll find someone who can. And we try to connect the dots. We try to put people in the best position to get them to where they're trying to get, right? We try to help them be a better version of themselves, as we do too.
Yeah. Well, Tony, I want to thank you, brother, for coming and the work that you're doing, for hometown, making it happen literally 1 block away, 2 blocks away from a lot of the work that's going on. And I'm glad. I'm glad that it's going on. I'm glad that our young people are having opportunities because back in the day, they were very scarce, but you're creating some major ones for them. So thank you for being with us, share with us here on the Social Justice Forums.
My pleasure. I hope to see you out there one day. I got to show you.
Oh,
You won't believe it.
It's a commitment. You know what I'm saying?
Hit me.
I'll be there. Anything for home. So you know that, and I appreciate you even sending the invitation. Thanks a lot.
All right, you got it, man. Stay safe.
Right. Tony Hillery, our guest here. Stay with us here. We got more show. Don't go anywhere. Right here on the Social Justice Forums.